Hey guys, and welcome back. Yeah, I know I've been a bit busy and I've been gone for a little while, and that's not really my fault at the moment. I've been working on this video for our commander game between me, Juan, Llama, and Jay, but they haven't put in their part for the audio for the video yet, and that's all that we're waiting on. Once the audio's in, we'll be pretty much ready to go. And after that we can just upload the video, but at the moment the editing's not done because part of it is not in yet. But once it's done, we will be uploading the video, and I'm sorry that it's taking so long, but we're just waiting on them to get their part done, and they're taking their time to take care of that. But anyway, I'm here basically to do another commander video and also update you all. But with that update being done, I thought I might as well just hop on to the actual commander. You see, the commander that I decided to go over was one that I enjoy personally myself. I just recently made the deck. He's really good. I love ramp, although black is my favorite devotion, black and red. I recently found out that I'm really good with green and ramp. So I decided to go with, one of my favorite commanders currently is Omnath. Let me pull him up real quick. Omnath, Locus of Rage, one of my favorite commanders at the moment. He's actually a really good card. Most people wouldn't run him anymore. I've seen some pretty good commander games with him personally, in person, not through YouTube or anything like that. I've seen some pretty good plays with him, and I decided after a little while I needed my own aggro green deck, but I didn't want to just make it pure green. So I decided to make it green red. But what commander do I know that's green red? And then when I looked it up, I found Omnath. I'm not really big on elementals until I found this guy. Landfill, I've always liked really the ability of it because there's a mono black vampire. I'm going to put her right here, and her ability is just landfill, and if it's a swamp, all creatures get an additional, +2/+0, which I liked a lot. And then I found out the other creatures that had landfill, and when I saw that he had landfill and his landfill was really good besides his other ability, I thought that he would be the perfect commander. So Omnath, I'm going to put him right here. He is a 7-drop, 3, 2 green and 2 red, or 2 red, 2 green, and his ability is landfill. Anytime you would play a land, you basically get a 5/5 elemental red-green creature token for free. Just imagine the ability to ramp and constantly put out more lands and constantly get more creatures and more tokens out. Now, there are some cards that I would recommend adding to the deck. Of course, not just pure elementals. An elemental tribal deck with red and green being a big thing. You can add tree folks and things like that, but I wouldn't just recommend running elementals and tree folks in general and just making it ramp. It's fun and all, but there are some cards that you can add to it that would make it fun. I tried to make the deck as tribal as possible, and I managed to, but there are some cards in there that aren't exactly just elementals. Now, for example, we have Ruik Thar. Of course, Ruik Thar, Unbound. I'm going to put a picture of him right here. His ability is also pretty good. He's got vigilance and reach, so if you face anything that's got flying or anything like that, you won't really have to worry about it. The reach ability is not the only thing that I like about it. It's the ability that he has vigilance. So even when his ability says that he has to attack each turn if able. So even if he attacks and he's still there after blocks are declared, you still have a blocker for yourself because he has vigilance, which is one of the things that I like the most about him. The other ability is that your opponent, whenever they cast a non-creature spell, they take 6 automatically right then and there. I love that ability because I also threw in another card, another elemental. I'm sorry, I have all my cards in my hands and I kind of didn't go over this, but what was it? Hostility. That one is a really good one to run in the deck because Omnath's effect and Ruik's effect also don't just burn, but with Omnath's effect, you take 3 for any time that an elemental creature dies. And with Hostility's effect, pretty much after you declare the activation of that ability, you can negate that ability and then get 3/1 elemental shaman tokens for free. Now this whole deck, it's very obvious, I've made it very much so you get tokens, a lot of tokens very quickly for free. And they're all very strong. They're all not just like, oh, it's just a 2/2 or a 1/1 token. They're 5/5s and 3/1s. Sure, the 3/1s can die pretty fast, but you can get them out pretty easily. If you were to use Ruik's ability while Hostility's on the field, you would get 6 3/1 tokens right then and there. Hostility also has haste, and if he was to be put into the graveyard, from the battlefield to the grave, you shuffle him back into your deck. So you don't have to worry about him really, leaving the field or not being able to come back unless your opponent exiles him using any sort of shenanigans of any sort. Other than that, some cards that you would run, of course, are some, well, I guess you would say mana ramp cards, such as Explore, Explosive Vegetation, Nisa's Pilgrimage, Nisa's Expedition, Nisa's Renewal, Nature's Lore. Nature's Lore is actually pretty good. It's an easy 2-drop. It's just basically like, which one was that? Hold on, I'm sorry. It's very much just like Explore, because you except for instead of drawing a card, you just tap 2, your monster, well, that's not a monster, but you just basically play a forest. And the other one is Swell of Growth. You target a creature and it gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and you play an additional land that turn. Again, you will get another token if you have landfill abilities off. So you would not just have to get, another land for your next turn or for that turn in case you tapped out, but you also get a free 5/5 green elemental token. That's pretty beefy if you ask me. And then there's also Cultivate, Rampant Growth, things like that. Those are pretty good cards that you want to use to ramp up your deck. Because if there are some cards, well, the one that I said previously, Swell of Growth, is an instant, so that means you get a free 5/5 token on your opponent's turn too. And all these cards help you ramp because they don't just put down one land for the turn, they put down 2, 3, and things like that. With that much on the field, you get 2 elemental tokens and things like that. It's amazing. And then there's some lands that you can, sack to get 2 more basic land cards, such as Blighted Woodlands. You tap 3 and 1 green, you sack this 1 card, and then you get 2 basic lands onto the battlefield, and then you shuffle your library. From putting those 2 onto the field, Omnath's effect will go off, and then you will get, of course, 2 green-red elemental tokens. Another good card that helps ramp, it's not a sorcery or an instant, but it's a good card. She's a bit more expensive than the rest of the cards that I put into the deck, but I think she's well worth it. Courser Crufix. Courser Crufix is a 1/2 green, and her abilities that you play with the top of your library reveal. And if it's a land card, you get to play it. It doesn't mean it has to be played on your turn. You can play it at any point. So that means if it's a land card, you can put it from the top of your deck to the battlefield, and that'll immediately trigger Omnath's effect or any other landfill effect, causing them to get their effect off. Meaning if it was Omnath, you get an immediate 5/5 elemental creature token, then you just keep going until it's no longer a basic land card or any kind of land. It doesn't have to be basic, it could be just a land, a cycling land, anything as long as it's a land that can hit the field. You get a free 5/5 elemental token if you have Omnath on the field. And the better thing about her too is that anytime you play a land, you gain a life. So you can easily gain a lot of life with this one deck. Another thing is there are some other cards in here that you can play that aren't necessarily like sorceries and things like that. There's a Yothmaya Dryad. Her ability is that when she hits the bot, she's got Forest Walk, but that's not what you're using her for. When she hits the field, you can basically put a forest from your deck, from your library, onto the field, and you get, Omnath's effect off pretty fast. Primal Druid, when she dies, she's a 0/3, 1+ green. When she dies, you basically get a free basic land card onto the battlefield again. So not only do you have a blocker, because she's a 0/3, but you also get, if she does die, a free land. And of course, there's some other cards like Hostility. Like I said, there's some cards that I put in here that get an effect off that also burn, such as Smash of Smithereens. You can destroy and target an artifact, and then it deals 3 damage to your opponent. You would negate that effect of the burn, and then you would get 3/1 red elemental shaman tokens. And with that, you could basically continue on to have a bunch of blockers, or you could have, if you were to block with them, if they were to die because, well, they're 3/1s, Omnath's effect would go off, where you would burn them for 3 each. And then you could again negate that effect with Hostility and get 9 3/1 elemental tokens. And that can easily fill the board very quickly. And I've won 4 games using this one ability. And there are some cards that you want to use too if you want draw power. I would consider Garruk's Pack Leader, Garruk's Pack Leader. Garruk Pack Leader, whenever another creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield, you may draw a card. Now, there was one specific card that recently came out in 2017's Commander decks, basically anytime a creature with 3 or greater hits the field, you draw a card. Now it doesn't say you may, so it forces you to draw a card, so it makes you have too big of a hand size unless you have cards that say you have no maximum hand size, which could be an issue because if you're like me, I don't own any cards that actually say you have no maximum hand size. So it does make an issue. So with this one, you get the choice to realize, oh, I have 7 cards in my hand already. I don't think I need to draw anymore. Because you can get, like I said, 3 1s, 5 5s, a bunch of tokens out on the field pretty quickly. And another card I would really suggest that recently came out in the new Ixalan set that I threw in here because I thought it would be really good. I'm sorry, like I said, I have my cards in my hand, and I probably should have made this really fast, or at least considered it, but I decided that, hey, I haven't uploaded a video in a while, I need to hop on it. Path of Discovery. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you explore, which means you reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a land, you add it to your hand. If not, you can put it into the graveyard or back on top, and the creature that enters the battlefield gets a +1/+1. It's a 3/+1 green, so I thought it would be really good for me to search my lands out and find out what's on the top of my deck, which is, I thought, would be a pretty good thing to put in there too. Spider Bellows. It's really fun because Spider Bellows is a 5/1, so it's a 6-drop. It's whenever it dies or leaves the battlefield, it deals 6 damage to target creature, which could easily just get rid of a commander off the bat. But the biggest thing I like about it is it's got Evoke, which is 1 and then 2 red, and when it enters the battlefield, I have to sack a creature, which means when I sacrifice it, Omnath's effect would go off, and then it would burn for another, and it really just gets a bunch of combos going because it's burn heavy, it's token heavy, it's mana ramp heavy, it's make your creatures get a lot of really big creatures out on the field heavy. I like the deck because it's got so many different win conditions that I can go with that I don't just need to choose beat down, burn, flood the field, commander damage effect. I don't need any of that. I just need to go with any one that I choose that comes up first. Now, the final card that I will mention or the 2 final cards I mean, that I will mention that have come in handy for me were Zendikar's Royal. Royal, huh? It's a 5-drop, 3/2 green, and it's an enchantment. When a land would enter the battlefield, you get a 2/2 green elemental token. And that really comes in handy. Again, it's very token heavy. Another landfill effect from an enchantment, which is what made me really consider making this deck, because landfill was an interesting concept. So again, I just decided to make the deck, and Omnath came out really well. I won 4 commander games with it, and I faced some pretty heavy hitters. I faced an Eldrazi deck, I faced a Krenko Mob Boss deck, I faced Edgar Markov, which is a very token heavy life gain and make you lose life kind of deck. I've also faced against Slivers with it, and it did pretty well. So again, that would be another card that I would put in there. And then for another card that's a sorcery, I would recommend Barrage of Boulders right here. I'm going to put a bigger one right there. Basically, it says it deals 1 damage to all creatures you don't control. So in a 4-way commander game, if your opponent has a bunch of 1/1 tokens, they're just gone. All those creatures are just blown away. It's a 2/1 red, so it's a 3-drop. Even better is if that you have a creature with a power 4 or greater, creatures can't block that turn. So that was to me, if you have Omnath on the field and a bunch of your other tokens out, nobody can declare blockers. So if you were to swing in, you can game possibly everybody or at least 2 players. Now, I know what a lot of people are thinking is that, oh, but what if I put out a bunch of tokens that one turn? I don't necessarily have a way for them to attack, which is why I play Hammer of Purphoros, which is a 3-drop, 1/2 red, and all my creatures have haste. I personally like it because it's not an enchantment, but it's an artifact. I would play other things that would give my creatures haste, but it's the only one that I currently have, and it's a bit of a high cost, but I personally like it because I can sack a land, make a 3/3 colorless golem enchantment artifact creature, and it really helps out, like I said. And then it would also in turn have haste because of its ability where creatures I control have haste. And another thing that you might want to play if you don't want people declaring blockers on you is Seismic Elemental. It's a 5-drop, 3 random and 2 red. When he enters the battlefield, creatures without flying can't block this turn. So again, another effect that allows you to attack for game with not just commander damage and other things like that. You could play Obelisk of Erd and call elementals and they would all get +2/+2, and it's really good. I run one in the deck, of course, because it's commander, so you can only technically have one, but I do run it in the deck and it's very helpful. And finally, the last few cards that I will mention are cards that will help you out if you can't personally afford like Lightning Greaves, because it's got kind of pricey. It's not like it's pricey as Soul Ring, but if you don't want to spend that much money on one, in this deck, Alpha's Authority, it's a 2-drop, it's 1 and 1 green. You just equip, it's an enchantment aura, and the creature becomes hexproof, and it can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. Yeah, it's a pretty good card, but if you want all your creatures to be hexproof, Archetype of Endurance, not too expensive of a card, really good and comes in handy because all your creatures become hexproof and all the creatures that your opponent controls lose hexproof. So that means if your opponent had something that was hexproof that you couldn't target, now they lost that ability and you can go ahead and swing at them. And now all your creatures have hexproof, not just one, but all of them do, which is another thing that I like. And finally, for the last card that I'm going to be talking about in this video is Stonehoof Chieftain, which I wish was a legendary to my core because he would be perfect as a commander if I could make one. But being that he's just a normal creature, he's just going to be thrown in every green deck I will probably ever make. Stonehoof Chieftain is that he's got Trample and Indestructible, one of the 2 favorite abilities that I see in Magic. And also, whenever another creature you control attacks, it gains Trampled Indestructible until end of turn. I mean, if you think about it this way, if you attack with a bunch of creatures, all of them gain Indestructible and Trample. So all your big creatures that originally might not have had Trample or Indestructible become Indestructible. Even if your opponent was to block them, you are still safe. And they would still do at least a little bit of damage to your opponent because they have Trample. And it's just an amazing card. Even if he was not to attack himself, your opponent, you would still have a bunch of indestructible trample creatures coming straight at your opponent. And he's indestructible himself without having to attack, so you would have this big 8/8 blocker right then and there. And he's only an 8-drop. In a mana ramp deck, it's really good and really easy to get him out by like turn 2 or 3. But he's a good card, and I really wish it was the legendary because I could really use him as a commander. But that is the last card I will be going over in the deck for Omnath, Locus of Rage. Ha ha ha. Really good card. I recommend making him if you don't want to start off with the newer 2017 commander decks. He would be a really good consideration. There are some pricey cards within the deck, but you can overall make the deck about with $20–25. It's not too bad. The only thing that I would consider throwing out if I could would be the Hedron Archive or something like that. It's a tap 3, no, not Hedron Archive, I'm sorry. There's a bunch of cards that I have in there that help ramp up to tap for a lot of mana. If I could get another Soul Ring, it would come in handy, but instead I do run Temple of the False Gods so that I can tap for 2. And because it ramps so easily, you again can really, really quickly get 5 lands onto the field, and then you can tap it for 2. So if I was to recommend to run anything else in this deck, it would be Soul Ring. But with that being said, we will get the video out as soon as possible. We just need the audio from the other people who were in the video. And once that's done, we will have our first commander game coming up. Tell us what you want to see for the next commander, and I will see what we can do, what set you're looking for us to do, what exactly you want to see from this channel. Just message us, and again, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. You have a nice night.